expected them to listen to
let's
the
listen in from Shankar Aiyar now. Shankar Aiyar, you are seeing protests happen by the opposition parties, not all, but Congress in particular. And you have heard the reply that came from the finance minister. Price rise is an issue, and of course, all these protests are happening at a time when we are seeing how soaring prices have forced central banks in many developed countries to raise their interest rates in recent weeks as well. How are you looking at economy vis-a-vis India?
There's no doubt that India has done better than many of the economies. It is better placed than many of the economies. But I am not sure whether I would give a certificate to Reserve Bank of India that they have done well. They were behind the curve. They are still behind the curve. They should have increased rates earlier to curb inflation. Having said that, the question is, I mean, if you look at it in a global context, the inflation comes at a very curious space. There is globalization of inflation and deglobalization of trade. What is the single biggest cause of India's inflation? It is imported inflation. It is the price of crude, the price of goods that we import, and currency has is a major factor in that. How do we manage this? I think there needs to be better understanding that economic security is the same as national security. And somewhere both the opposition and the ruling party have to yield space for a discussion on what could be the glide path ahead for the common person. You know, scoring points on a day-to-day basis is good entertainment, but does this alleviate the misery that people are going through in their homes? So that is the question. And I must say that it's very disappointing that both sides, I mean, particularly the Congress, how it has approached the issue of price rise. We would have expected them to have a continuous process on price rise. Protests for Congress seem to have become seasonal events. So if you notice, every monsoon session, sort of the first 15 days get washed out. And this, the fault lies with both the ruling party and the opposition.
Okay.
If there is going to be no discussion on the floor of parliament on an issue as significant as economic growth on inflation, then the people of India will start thinking about the process of democracy. I mean, you know, yesterday the Bank of England said,
yes.
I mean, in one of the finest statements by a central bank governor, he gave a forward guidance saying that inflation will touch 13%. We will have a recession in England for 18 months. Now, what are the plans that the British government has? They will unveil. Similarly, a glide path is required in India. The Reserve Bank of India has given a target of 6.7 or 7% inflation. All major agencies have trimmed down growth. So what is the glide path that the government of India has? I mean, the issue of inflation is also an opportunity,
yes,
for the government to unleash reforms.
Shankar Aiyar, I'm going to come back to you on the issue of economics here and inflation, because it's now playing out in pure political domain. And I can see Anurag Bhadoria as well. Anurag Bhadoria, why is the Congress only protesting? What about other opposition parties? What about the Samajwadi Party, TMC? अगर ये इतना इम्पोर्टेंट मुद्दा है आम आदमी के लिए, तो बाकी सब लोग क्यों नहीं खड़े हैं आम आदमी के साथ? क्योंकि कांग्रेस बोलती है कि हम आम आदमी के साथ हैं।
देखिए, इस देश के अंदर में जिस तरह से भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार में महंगाई बढ़ी है, बेरोजगारी बढ़ी है, जिस पे इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ा है, और भारतीय जनता पार्टी उस पर बात भी नहीं करना चाहती है। पार्लियामेंट के अंदर भी बात नहीं कर रही है, पार्लियामेंट के बाहर भी बात नहीं करना चाहती है। और जिस तरह से शिव भक्तों का, कृष्ण भक्तों का, क्योंकि सावन का महीना है, कृष्ण जन्माष्टमी भी आने वाली है, और यहाँ शिव जी की पूजा हो रही है, और आपने दूध दही छाछ पे जीएसटी लगा के उसे बढ़ा दिया। इसके मतलब आप उन भक्तों का भी सम्मान नहीं कर रहे। उनको दूध दही जो उनको चढ़ावा होता है उस पर भी आपने जीएसटी लगा दिया। दूसरी तरफ भारतीय जनता पार्टी के नेता देश की ना बात करके, वो देश के असली मुद्दों की ना बात करके मुद्दों से भटकाने की बात करते हैं। जैसे आपने देखा कि पार्लियामेंट में खड़े होकर एक बीजेपी के नेता कह रहे हैं कि हमने 80 करोड़ लोगों को फ्री में अनाज बांटा है। मतलब 80 करोड़ के लोग जो हैं अब देश में भूखे मर रहे हैं, जिनको खाने के लिए 2 वक्त की रोटी नहीं है। तो बीजेपी की सरकार
अनुराग जी,
ने
आज जो योगी आदित्यनाथ ने बोला उसकी बात करें, क्योंकि कांग्रेस पार्टी, उनका कहना है कि वो आस्था के खिलाफ है। उन्होंने हिंदू जो बिलीवर्स हैं उनके आस्था को उन्होंने हर्ट किया है, क्योंकि वो काले कपड़े में थे आज दिन।
देखिए, मैं वही तो कह रहा हूं, मैंने उसका जवाब पहले दे दिया कि ये भारतीय जनता पार्टी है जो आस्था की भी राजनीति करना चाहती है। शिव भक्तों को, कृष्ण भक्तों को, जो लोग जन्माष्टमी के दिन दूध दही और यहाँ शिव भक्त लोग अपने शिव के ऊपर में दूध का चढ़ावा करते हैं, उसको आपने महंगा कर दिया। इसके मतलब आप उनको, शिव भक्तों को, कृष्ण भक्तों को, दोनों को आपने अपमानित किया, दोनों के साथ अन्याय किया। वो कैसे उसको
Aprajita, Sarangi, here is a charge coming from the Samajwadi Party that on one hand you're talking about Ram Bhakt being insulted by the Congress Party because of their black kurtas. What about the Bhakts of Shiv?
See, they have to understand the fact that before the imposition of this 5% on the pre-labeled goods, many of the states had actually imposed VATs from their side, and many of these states are the non-NDA rule states. So Samajwadi Party spokesperson Mr. Anurag ji should actually get into that economics too. He should go for some kind of comparison. So, you know, before this imposition, all these states, most of these states, including those non-NDA states, had imposed. So there can be, we have to rationalize the whole thing, understand it carefully, and then we can argue. This is one. Number two, I must say emphatically that there is a difference between Sadak and Sansad. Congress party can put up a very good performance on the Sadak of India. Today they did. But I wish they put up the same kind of performance in the Sansad too. So it's very important to talk in Sansad with facts and figures and argue with the government. We want a very strong opposition. Let me tell you very candidly. Prime Minister Modi's government want a very, very strong opposition which would be able to argue with facts and figures. But I think the Congress is coming out as a very weak opposition, and I would say definitely the other opposition parties also are not actually supporting the main opposition leader, that's the Congress in the Lok Sabha and in the Rajya Sabha.
Okay, Anurag Bhadoria, before you respond, I think the question is also to the Congress party. Manikam Tagore, has the Congress really not been able to communicate the real intent behind these protests? Because it seems that other parties in opposition are really not standing with you on this issue. They're not on board.
Oh, Maria, we have to understand that it's a people's issue. Price rise and the GST issues, it's affecting the common public. And from 18th of August, Congress party, from every day we are asking for a debate. That is to have a priority on price rise discussion. But the government, because of their arrogant attitude, 9 days they wasted and 9th day accepted for a debate. And to my colleague in the Lok Sabha from the BJP, I will tell to her that Mr. Manish Tiwari was the first speaker who spoke on the price rise. He gave all the queries also he asked about it to the finance minister. She was not replying to the queries because finance minister doesn't speak about finance. She speaks about politics because she was a spokesperson of the BJP. She was not at all replying to the real questions with people, not solutions also. She, as finance minister, she should give solutions also, and she should ask the opposition. There are learned ex-finance ministers in the opposition also. They can all help us because the country needs to be governed by them. They have been voted. Yes. But other people are also ready to give good suggestions. But they are not ready to hear it. She was not ready to accept there is a price rise.
Why isn't that suggestion coming from the opposition?
She has to. Then, very good question, Maria. When you ask a question only, I'll give a suggestion, you know. If you say that you know everything and there is no price rise itself, where kaha mengai, that was the word she used.
Can I come in, Maria?
Where kaha mengai, that was the word she used, Nirmala ji. Because she was giving a political speech. You have to understand it. When as the finance minister, when you are not governing this country in a better financial situations, You speak all other rational things. That she was doing it. She was doing it in the parliament. Therefore, only today we had given an adjournment motion to answer about
Okay, Aprajita
Prime
Sarangi,
Minister.
How long will the government dismiss it that, you know, that there is no inflation at all? महंगाई नहीं है. Aprajita Sarangi? Okay, we'll try and fix that line with... Yes, Anurag Badoria, make your point. We'll try and fix that line with Aprajita Sarangi.
महंगाई के नाम पे अपराजिता जी को सुनाई नहीं पड़ेगा, क्योंकि इनकी जिम्मेदारी होती है पार्लियामेंट को ऑर्डर में रखना. पार्लियामेंट को चलाने की जिम्मेदारी किसकी होती है? सरकार की. अब सरकार कोई भी जिम्मेदारी नहीं लेना चाहती, पार्लियामेंट चलाने की भी जिम्मेदारी नहीं लेना चाहती. महंगाई बढ़ी है, इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ा है, उसकी भी जिम्मेदारी नहीं लेना चाहती. तो फिर आप किस चीज की जिम्मेदारी लेते हैं? सिर्फ अपोजिशन को क्रिटिसाइज करने का, सिर्फ उसके बारे में, अपोजिशन के बारे में बात करना है आपको. आम जनता की भी आप बात नहीं करना चाहते. जैसा मैंने आपको पहले ही बोला था.
अनुराग जी, मुझे ये बताइए कि आप ये जो ब्लैक ड्रेस प्रोटेस्ट जो था, आप कांग्रेस पार्टी के इसको किस तरह से देख रहे हैं?
देखिए, हर पार्टी का प्रोटेस्ट करने का अपना एक तरीका होता है. कांग्रेस ने अपने तरीके से प्रदर्शन किया. सब पार्टी का अपना अलग अलग होता है. वो अपना तरीका है. लेकिन मैं पूछता हूँ, इन्होंने शिव भक्तों का, जिस भक्तों का के ऊपर अन्याय क्यों किया? उनको इस सावन के महीने में इसमें उन्होंने जीएसटी क्यों बढ़ाया?
Okay, Aprajita Sarangi, go ahead.
Yes, see, as far as inflation is concerned, I would definitely like to give certain figures. Now, there is a line in English, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. If the opposition parties decide not to get convinced, I think God also cannot help them. But the facts have to be acknowledged by them. The fact is that today India stands at an inflation rate of 7%. Germany, US 9.1%, UK 9.4%, Spain 10.8%, and currently there are 64 countries in the world whose inflation rate is 10% or more. So we have to see things in the context. You know, we are recovering from COVID, and there has been Russia-Ukraine war, and Madam Nirmala Sitharaman kept on talking of the measures that the government has been taking, and she was humble enough to acknowledge that yes, the inflation is high, but we are putting in all efforts to ensure that it comes down further, and there are employment opportunities created. And you know, I mean, it is I would say, please don't call me kind of, you know, I mean, I'm very, with all humility, I would say that please don't question the policy and the intention of Prime Minister Modi's government. We are working in all sectors. We are trying to bring in as many reforms as possible. We are trying to give as many good programs as
Anurag
possible.
Badoria,
And
as
we are
far
also
as this